I joined as a technical person and left as a marketing person. I am not a salesperson. The website at the time I joined the company was crap. That didn't reflect what the business was doing. This is poor. We need something better. Smaller businesses, I think, are a bit more exposed. There's going to be a little bit of a shakeout this next few months.
We've definitely seen redundancies this year.
The reason why I left was that pipeline of opportunities and chances to do different things had just dried up. So I effectively run out of road. If you're talking about something, chances are you're probably the sort of most knowledgeable person on that particular subject in the room. You can't rely on one channel or approach, and you just have to embrace as many as you can. Life presents you opportunities, and it's down to you really whether you take them or not. Don't wait to be asked, just do it.
The Metal Guys Talk Business podcast is brought to you by Compton Group, a specialist recruitment agency working in the metal, manufacturing and engineering sectors.
Hey guys, Pete and Mike.
The Metal Guys.
Today we're joined by Rodney Rice from Langley Alloys. How are you?
Pretty good, all things considered.
Thanks for joining us. I think we're going to do this as the first episode of season 4. So I hope we are, given that we've just said it. But yeah, you've been on our list of people to talk to for a while. So thanks for popping down before your major surgery.
Is this your little black book or your hit list?
Both.
Hit list,
Hit list, yeah.
Yeah, we still need to get, what's he called from Ireland?
Keith Reynolds.
Keith, yeah. We want to get Keith Reynolds on. He won't come on. Be
Okay.
a great story.
Yeah.
One day, Keith.
Yeah. Yeah. We'd like to get him on.
Rodney, can you just give us a little bit of background? Because there'll be some people who know you, might have seen your face a few times online. But if we roll back, just your early days in the industry, how did you drop into this sector?
Oh, I had the very sort of traditional start in a way. I was a graduate metallurgist and joined British Steel straight from university, and spent 25 years there. You know, going in as British Steel, coming out as Tata Steel, with a lot in between. But I had the benefit or the opportunity of literally starting. My first placement was in a blast furnace, and 25 years later, I ended up in the marketing function in distribution, which is about as far away from a blast furnace as you can get. And in between, I did a hot mill, I did a cold mill, I did a stint in the US, I did R&D, and marketing and product development and coated steel, you know, pretty much nose to tail in that business as it was set up at the time, in terms of both functions and different parts of the operation.
Wow. And how did those opportunities kind of be put to you in a big group? Did you just internal applications or?
No, it's funny. I was chatting about this with someone the other day, and most of the opportunities presented themselves. It was a bigger company then than it is now, and there was periods of it being reorganized and changing management structure and growing and sites being created, and opportunities would present themselves, and it was a case of it was a case of grabbing hold of them, really. It was less about applying and interviewing and being selected, and more just things popping up and then grasping that opportunity. So I was really fortunate at that time. And to some extent, after 25 years, the reason why I left was that sort of pipeline of opportunities and chances to do different things had just dried up. So I effectively run out of road and needed to try and do something else somewhere else.
A lot of people now, especially people trying to come into the industry, obviously what we're trying to do is attract new people coming into the sector. Obviously they want opportunities. They want opportunities to grow, develop and have a career. And I think careers used so much more now than it perhaps even was when I was starting off in the metal industry. How was it for yourself? Obviously you've developed a career then within British Steel over 25 years. But, you know, say to your colleagues, were they as hungry to have a career, or how was it looked on back then?
Some were, maybe some weren't. It's funny. So if I pitch up at Metals Expo, there'll be a group of people of a sort of similar age, similar background, some still within the business, a lot of them outside, but in the metals industry. And we've all got on in different ways. But that's maybe like a small cadre or group of people, and there'll be a lot of people that are working on the same site that they started at 30 odd years ago. So I don't think there's a standard experience. Life presents you opportunities, and it's down to you really whether you take them or not.
Because I find it interesting now, like, obviously we've all had doing our career now. I think a lot of youngsters where they get frustrated so quickly, don't they? I think they start off with doing, say, let's just say internal sales, and within 5 years, there's almost an expectation to be an MD. Like,
Which is unrealistic.
no, 100%, but it seems to have a lot what we see more with, saying youngsters, but it's this cycle of 12 to 18 to 2 years move, and then move to be almost for a more senior position. Where obviously what you did there was 25 years in one business, but there was always opportunities.
And maybe it was a little bit easier because, to be honest, it's a sort of a corporate setting in a way, a business that employed 20, 30,000 people at the time. And there would have been HR departments and training colleges and lots of opportunities for learning and development. And talking of a career ladder was something that was quite normal and accepted. And because the business had multiple sites, there would always be opportunities, but sometimes it might mean moving between locations. So that was might have been a limiting factor for some people if you had to relocate from one part of the UK or to a completely different country. I mean, I only moved from South Wales to North Wales, but in South Wales I was in 2 different locations, and in between that I had a year or so in the US. So I guess I was young, free and single, and I didn't have the challenges of moving family and dependents. So it was relatively easy. If it was a good opportunity and it was something I wanted to do, I could just up sticks and go. But that's not the same for everybody either. So I do consider that time sort of fortunate in a way. The business doesn't exist in the same structural way, and it's probably difficult if you're joining smaller organizations or companies to quite have that scope of activity. And I'll joke at times with the business owner at Langley Alloys between, the subtlety between job and career.
Yeah.
And I'll say, well, I used to have a career and now I've got a job, and he knows I'm winding him up.
Yeah.
But
does he buy him every time?
No, we've it's an old joke now. We've knocked the edges off that one. But we've grown in terms of headcount, and we've brought people in, and we'd like to give people opportunities, but it's not as easy as just, I'd like to give you an opportunity. What does that actually mean?
Yeah.
Sometimes it's difficult to invent or create them, but if we can, and if it suits both parties, we'll try. But it's not easy.
I
You
think
can't just
businesses-
invent a job.
No, you can't. No, I think businesses now, like Langley, and there's many other distributors, are very similar with the kind of. And our business is like, we don't really have a big changeover of staff, a bit like yourselves. I think people buy into the business in a different way, don't they? And I think they buy into kind of what can be achieved together as a team, and it becomes a lot more about each other than individually of where you want to go. And I think when I was at UKF, it was very much like that. It wasn't necessarily about, it wasn't until after I left, it was about career. But when I was there, it was about how far can we push us as a team? What can we do with Phil at the top to make this a better business for everyone? And it's kind of a unique, I think a lot of SMEs have that, where it's kind of that, it's a unique thing that big corporate companies don't have.
Maybe, a bigger corporate entity, you feel not so much less engaged, but because it's a bigger organization, your personal contribution can get lost.
Mm-hmm.
In a smaller business, the sort of feedback, the reward, I won that order, I found that customer, you get that much more immediate sense of accomplishment or feedback. But
It's a good
certainly what I found is that as our business has grown over the last few years, certainly in terms of sort of number of sites and headcount, is the team has broadened out. But the challenge is having people within that team sort of stepping up in a way and taking a bit more responsibility. There's directors and experienced people in the in the team, but they won't necessarily be there forever. But even if they are, the business is more complicated than
Yeah.
it used to be. And you can't just have one person trying to do everything everywhere. You need almost like a broader leadership group in
Yeah,
a
yeah.
way. So who's
Yeah.
taking care of things while I'm here today? You know, you want some of your sales and your operational team to take that additional authority and responsibility rather than waiting for somebody else to make a decision for them. And that's one part of an opportunity, isn't it?
Yeah.
Don't wait to be asked, just do it.
Yeah.
Because how long have you been with Langley Alloys for now?
For 8 years, I think.
Yeah.
And I came in when we had one site in the UK, but we had 2 in the US and 1 in Singapore. And now we've consolidated to a much bigger site in the US in one location and put the 2 operations in one place. Singapore, we decided to close, but we do more business in that part of the world now than we ever did when we were physically there with stock. And then the UK business was one single site, and I think now we're spread over 4 locations, just as we've grown and grown, and we've sort of gone from bursting at the seams to opening a site and then having a separate business and then acquiring a business. And they all operate with a level of interaction or interdependence, but it's a very different business even to 7, 8 years ago. And hopefully we'll just carry on that
Yep.
growth, acquisition, bringing on new products, bringing on new customers, and just, I think it makes the business more sustainable ultimately. It's not growth for the sake of growth, but I always explain it to colleagues that the bigger we are, the more stable, secure, sustainable we are, you know. So
Do you suffer from any of these problems? Are you asking around your office trying to find a new supplier or source materials? Have you got aged or high-priced stock that you'd like to liquidate anonymously? Or would you like new business from customers that are guaranteed to pay you for your materials? If the answer to any of the above is yes, then you'll be pleased to know that the Metal Guys Talk Business podcast is sponsored by SteelBuy. SteelBuy are a digital platform revolutionising the way businesses trade metal products online. SteelBuy offers risk-free trading where sellers are guaranteed to be paid, and automated processing including certification, logistics and invoicing. The network of vetted buyers and sellers is continually growing, and it's all housed in an easy-to-use trading platform accessible on any device. The online business-to-business marketplace for products is rapidly gathering pace, and SteelBuy are ideally positioned to capture the changing demands of steel buyers. So check out SteelBuy today and be part of the future of metal trading. Now let's jump back into the podcast.
We're seeing a lot of people talking about grad positions. I was out the other week at Certec and they were doing these apprentice awards, and rather than grads, apprentices, seeing these apprentice awards, and it was great. You know, they've got like 50 plus people there. They've got a big system in place, and it seems more aligned to what you were talking about when you were in your early career. You're in a big company, so you're fortunate that you get those opportunities. But what I wanted to, there's 2 parts of this. Firstly, how do you think the bigger businesses, like the bigger steel mills in the UK, are doing with regard to attracting people but actually giving them a career? And then we'll move on more to like the smaller business and how they can kind of do that. But yeah, what are your thoughts on the state of UK steel, but more in terms of actually attracting people and giving them a proper career compared to what it was like when you started?
I think the bigger companies will still have that mindset of wanting to recruit good people and give them good training, good development opportunities, and bring them through, because they may be slightly smaller and there may be slightly fewer of them than there were 30 odd years ago when I entered the industry, but they're still big entities in their own right. So, you know, I'll not say I've been all over the graduate recruitment pages, but I think there's still that quite traditional, almost a milk ground of approaching people while they're still studying,
Yeah.
and getting people in for internships and secondments, and getting them more comfortable and familiar with a location. Maybe now things are a little bit more accessible in a way,
Yep.
i.e. the range of industries you could go into is more open and varied. So those companies have to work a bit harder to get people in. But the flip side is I've had the benefit of seeing processes, operations, sites that are just so immense that it just totally blows your mind. And if you get beyond, 30 years ago, steel was described as a sunset industry, and it's still around. So it's hardly a sunset industry. I think now that people would call it a foundation industry. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's sort of been rebranded. That it's something that instead of something we used to do that's disappeared, it's something we do that's vitally important. And it's about finding ways of maintaining it.
Do you think it's attractive enough? Because we just see the bad headlines all the time. And it's like, as a parent, when you're looking at, we've both got younger kids now, and you start thinking, right, well, what are they going to do? And I've heard this a lot, because obviously my dad was in the sector.
Yeah.
And he was never, he was pro the sector coming into it, while other people were like, oh, I wouldn't have my kids coming into it. Why the hell would you come into this? It's like you're saying, a sunset dying industry. So where are we now in terms of actually bringing people in? Should people be attracted to it in the way that maybe you were? And
I
do you
don't see.
think,
It's difficult for me to answer that dispassionately, given very personal lived experience. But my personal experience would have been that the sort of training and development that I was given, was sort of second to none, and it would be very difficult. And that was back then, and I can't imagine it's any lesser these days. A lot of the skills and experience are transferable, so it's not wasted.
Yeah.
I'm distinctly, I'm a metallurgist that went into metals and segued very slightly from carbon steel to stainless and from
Yeah.
flat products to long. So it's hardly a big leap, but you learn a lot of practical, personal skills as well as professional ones that could be applied elsewhere. So I don't think it's a dead end by any means, but it's still a massive industry, depending on where do you define the boundaries between manufacturers and producers and distributors and processors and traders, and then all of the associated supporting activities. It's still a huge employer of people in lots of different facets. Like I say, I joined as a technical person and left as a marketing person. And at times it suited that I had a technical background going into development, or I had a development background going into R&D, or I had manufacturing experience going into marketing. Sometimes having a slightly different angle helps you actually go into
Have you found
roles
it?
that's not a pure straight line of I started as a marketing person, so I'll always be a marketing
Yeah.
person. No.
No.
because you said the challenge is having people to step up, take responsibility, and when there's opportunities to actually grasp those opportunities. So is that kind of why you've done what you've done? Because we see it a lot, someone's a metallurgist and they staunchly stay a metallurgist throughout their whole career, or they work in QA. That's just what they do.
A
Like,
lot of that now is like, I think is like recruiters' faults as well. Because when
can be.
say Rodney come on today and you wanted a business development manager for, say, people who represent Duplex, we would go away and find a business development manager who sold Duplex. Like, we hit it, don't we? Very rarely do we see where we put 3 people who've sort of been an established business development manager and 3 people who've done internal sales.
Or 3
90%,
people that have done quality.
yeah, of 90% of the time, you go for the person who's proven track record.
Mm-hmm.
And I
And
think,
somewhat relevant experience or
which is why I
transferable
find it,
contacts.
which is why I find it interesting with yourself is how you went from, say, British Steel to Langley Alloys, because we see that, we don't see that enough. And I think with skill shortages and with what's going on, people need to look at something and go, well, they've got a metal mind, if you like. Actually, they know a length, a width, a gauge, a grade. It can just be transferred over. But how easy was that for yourself, and how did that opportunity come about?
Talk about the opportunity, because that's the obvious one. So I think I suggested I was given lots of opportunities through my time in a big steel company.
Yeah.
And those opportunities presented themselves. But when they stopped presenting themselves, and I felt that I'd sort of reached a dead end in a way, I could have quite happily stayed there. I had sufficient tenure in the business that I wasn't necessarily going anywhere, which for some people would be a good thing, but for me was a bad thing. I was bored, I was frustrated, I wasn't able to make an impact, and I wasn't excited about what I was doing. So I was looking for something different, and I was effectively headhunted. I was approached. And it's funny because the recruiter said, you've obviously heard of Langley Alloys. I went, no, no. Why would I? Because I was flat carbon, big steel, not even stainless, sort of niche, high performance alloys, long products into sort of oil and gas and marine and defense, completely different entity, completely different scale. And I think on one hand, the owner that recruited me, his maybe concern was, well, if you come from a big company, you want to manage rather than do.
Yeah.
And for me, I was stepping out of a big organization with all that infrastructure and support thinking, oh my God, what have I got myself into here? But you get over those initial butterflies or qualms and get stuck in.
Why do you think they took the punt on you? Because you're right, when you look at it, like we would look at that and go, that's probably a mismatch. Even if we'd spoken to you and thought, I think that you can do that job, again, on paper, you'd be like, not a chance.
It's an interesting one. And you know what? I've never really thought about it.
Well, here you go.
Yeah. Well, and I haven't. And to be honest, it's easier as you get, I guess, closer to the end of your working life than at your beginning. But for all the sort of stories and the moves and the promotions and whatever along the way, I think many times I will have had a degree of self-doubt, or the whole imposter syndrome thing, in that I'm not sure I will have interviewed saying, oh, I'll whatever you want doing, I'll do it, I'll smash it. I'm not sure I would have presented myself in that way. But as to what sealed the deal, I probably didn't think about it too much. I was grateful for the chance to get out and move on and do something different. If I was thinking about it more sort of impartially, rationally, probably had a good background, professional qualification in terms of metallurgy or being a chartered engineer is helpful. It gives you some credibility if you're talking to customers or end users, a breadth of background, and then coming from a large organization, you have an assumption that you have some sort of organizational skills. But I'm sure a lot of it will ultimately have just come down to personal characteristics.
What were you brought in to initially do? What was the initial role within the business?
I joined in 2016, and I guess the business had suffered a downturn like a lot of other businesses had, particularly associated with supplying to oil and gas. So 2016 was a low point for the business, and I was brought in effectively as a spare director, as a business development director, and it was almost an extra pair of hands to be able to take things off the leadership team, the management team at the time, and maybe try and support some growth and some other activities.
How did you feel about doing that though? Because obviously there is...
with the benefit of hindsight, I was given the title of business development director, and I freely say to anybody, I am not a salesperson. Now I end up doing a bit, or trying anyway, but I'm not a natural sales animal. It was maybe a round peg in a square hole. It wasn't the most obvious of fits. So like you said, Mike, if someone was looking for business development, my profile was not traditional or obvious, but the business development really was an opportunity to learn the business and learn the industry a bit, meet suppliers, meet some customers, attend some exhibitions and events. And I probably just picked up the whole marketing side. So, rewrote every product data sheet, every brochure, built a new website, etc., etc. And that sort of segued into working with the sales team. And then literally the day before COVID started, I took responsibility then for the operations of the site. So more sort of GM for the distribution bit. And then subsequently that's extended to be the UK and the US distribution bit. But in terms of that entry point, I wasn't the most obvious of candidates with with the benefit of hindsight.
From the outside, I was looking at your LinkedIn this morning. For us trying to bring new people in, companies like Langley, where you're seeing, like, you talked last week, you was in the US. It's like that's what people want to be part of, don't they? Like having
I
those
hope so.
having those opportunities, because I think now in a world where people do a lot of self-learning, when you think of like the people listening to podcasts of entrepreneurs and people trying to run businesses, I think that's what people want now, almost working with people who are business people, having those opportunities of international travel, seeing other cultures, doing that. When you put it all together with what Langley are doing, it's like it ticks so many boxes of where
I had a
young
new
people would want a career.
had a new apprentice start with us a couple of weeks ago, and we've just been chit chatting in the office. He said, "Oh, are you going to the States?" I was like, "Yeah." He said, "Is it business or pleasure or business?" He said, "Oh, can I go?"
Yeah,
And I said,
Ledge.
"You
Yeah.
you've been with us a week, mate.
Yeah. Yeah.
Give it a little bit of time." But I love that. I love the
Yeah.
fact that it was, oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
maybe
it
when
is.
he signed up to do his apprenticeship with us, we might have said, "Oh, we do this and we do that," but maybe it was in one ear out of the other. So
Yeah, but it's
all of
good
a sudden,
opportunities
it's
though,
like,
isn't
"Oh,
it?
wow, okay,
Yeah.
yeah, that's nice."
Yeah,
A
it is.
bit of ambition, maybe a bit of interest.
Those are the bits, though. I think Mike had good experience when he was at UKF. He always speak really passionately about
Yeah.
how that opportunity kind of happens. You're just selling a phone to a bloke and he goes, "Do you want a job?" and end up just taking it and running with it and learning. But you were sent out and did a lot. You've spoken about your travel early days and stuff like that. When I first started, my old man just started sending me here, there, and everywhere. I had to do it all on my own, and you just crack on and do it. But those are the big learnings. I think for younger people, I think if businesses can get some of those youngsters straight out the door. Mechatherm was saying it, weren't they? That lad had been there for a couple of months and he was straight over to the States for a couple of weeks. It was fantastic for him.
I think it's making sure your job doesn't get boring, doesn't it? I think the function can be the same, but you still want those opportunities. And I think that's where businesses, when they can do it, it works well, because I think it doesn't always have to be like, we'll speak to people and they've got 10 years experience and they're not always moving for money. It's more getting those opportunities, what you've spoke about in your career. And those opportunities don't always mean a little bit of responsibility. It might be a training course. It might be an opportunity to go to the US. It might be a case of being able to go to Tube Dusseldorf. These are the things where, when I think I left UKF, I almost always say quite often is I stopped learning, because they were employing me for the knowledge I'd learned at UKF and not about going, well, actually, we're employing you now, Mike, but then we're going to develop you. I stopped developing completely, because the amount of opportunities I used to get, it'd be like all the time.
No, not everybody's the same. Not everybody is looking for
No.
opportunity in a way. Some people are comfortable with
Yeah,
a
that's right, yeah.
9 to 5, or they enjoy
Yeah.
the environment, the atmosphere. They appreciate their co-workers. All of these things are all perfectly reasonable and good reasons to
Yeah.
work at our place or somewhere else. But there will be individuals that will want to more from themselves and more from life, and that's the challenge in a way, is trying to match and manage that
Yeah.
that expectation with Langley rather than with somebody else.
Yeah, that's it. If we move away from the kind of career side now, and obviously we talk about Langley Alloys, we're talking at the moment as if everyone knows who Langley Alloys are. And
I can't
obviously,
imagine they do.
yeah, and obviously one thing you said a few moments ago was like you didn't know who Langley Alloys were. So I mean, who are Langley Alloys, and what do you do really?
For me, one of the cool things about Langley Alloys is it's a sort of a game of two halves in a way. On the one half, you've got a really old, established name. The company's been going more than 80 odd years. And in the early days, it was literally inventing and melting and rolling unique alloys. Set up in 1938, and it was creating things for naval, defence, aerospace applications, and that's given us still trademarks and trademarked alloys that were invented 60, 70 years ago that are still sold today. And behind my desk, there's books of newspaper cuttings from the 40s with all the adverts from the business and all sorts of almost like historical references and relics. And it's really cool to have that backstory. But the business today, the other half of the story, is it's very much a focused distributor and has been, say, for about 15 years. And focused in as much as a relatively tight range of alloys, which I tend to describe to people as it's for applications where it's sort of wet and corrosive. So long-term immersion in seawater, be that oil and gas or pumping, um, mining, desalination, water treatment, basically aggressive environments. And so the metals, duplex and super duplex stainless steels, nickel-based alloys, it's that sort of niche end of the spectrum. It's the sort of 2% of the 2% in terms of
Yeah.
how niche we are. So, in the grand scheme of things, coming out of Tata Steel, never having heard of Langley, obviously,
Yeah.
but we're trying to be, I guess, that slightly bigger fish in a smaller pond. It's a relatively small market for these higher performance alloys. You generally know the other people that are stocking and distributing them, and you generally know who's buying from where.
And
Yeah.
how's the business changed over the years of, like, obviously there's a lot of processing capabilities you now have. I mean, is that becoming more and more that your customers are pushing you to go down that route?
Maybe not so much pushing, but maybe more, again, it's opportunistic.
Yeah.
So when I joined, the business was operating from one location in the UK, and I think we had one small lathe, and it was almost like a trial order to just machine some simple components. Sort of fast forward 8 years, and we've got a pretty comprehensive machining capability, but it's a bit of a secret, really, because we don't offer it particularly to the open market. We have 4 or 5 customers that have been long-standing customers of ours, and in the past they will have taken big lumps of bar, and now they take machine components. So that's one change. The distribution side is just bigger. 2 or 3 times more stock, twice as many people, a second warehouse to fit it all in, squeezing every bit of square footage out of our facilities.
Is that just demand
and the
as
offices
well?
as well.
Is that just a demand for more of these products? Because obviously as you say, you're a niche within a niche. So desalination, is that on the growth? Is that like a sector that you're seeing more, hence why you're doing more? Is there more going on in oil and gas than...
Yes and no. I
Yeah.
mean, there will be markets and applications. So if you think, demand for clean drinking water, it is only going to go up, and that's going to drive the demand for desalination. But is it a massive end market for us? No, but it's important.
I'll just jot that one down for everyone else.
Yeah. Well, but these are not
No, I
common
know.
or garden applications where you're just going to use any old bar from any old place. Fertilizer production's a really cool one in that feeding a growing population. How you can maximize their crop yields is through fertilizer, and most people wouldn't think of it, but there's parts of the world with big factories making phosphate fertilizers, and that's been a long-standing application for our business for many years, but that's only going to grow. Renewable energy, once you start to move into different forms of wind turbines and structures out at sea, long-term immersion in seawater, changes of the metals they're made from. Not the big towers, for sure.
No.
It's a 400, 500 ton fabrication. It's not going to be made out of super duplex stainless. You couldn't afford to build it out of these alloys. But some of the componentry around it, naval and defence, in current uncertain times geopolitically, that's going to continue to have greater importance. And oil and gas has pretty much just come off the back of a 2-year surge in production post COVID, sort of a COVID recovery, and that's been a real big driver of the business in the short term. But there's this sort of underlying markets and applications and opportunities, I think, that are still going to feed their way through.
When you market this, because that's one of the things I wanted to touch on when you were saying you kind of joined as business development, and then...
I never really did that role.
Correct. Well, that's exactly what I was going to say.
You talk like a salesman,
Just
Rodney.
a flag of convenience. Yeah.
So you start in BD effectively for Langley, and you said, right. So the first thing I kind of did was I rewrote all the specs, and I was like, classic Classic sales there.
Yeah.
I'll find another job to do.
Yeah. Find
And
something
then-
a bit easier.
Yeah, well, and also it's more in your wheelhouse, isn't it? You're more comfortable in that environment going, right, okay.
It was technical marketing in a way.
Well, you learn, absolutely. So you're learning at the same time. So you did that. And then you rebuilt the website. And I always thought still think it's interesting now that you've put so much work into that website.
Mhm.
Is that where most of the kind of the newer leads and prospects come through? Is it through that website, or is it getting out in front of people? You know, how is that happening? Because you can't just ring up or go onto an industrial estate and assume people are going to want to buy Hasterboy or something like that.
Well, you can, but it's not.
It's unlikely.
It's
isn't
not
it?
a
It's very
very-
scattergun.
It's not very rewarding. So you could go to 100 machine shops
Yeah.
and just knock on the door and say, "Hey, do you use Super Duplex, or do you use Alloy, or do you use whatever?" And they'll say yes, but what they mean is they've probably machined it one time, but, a number of years ago, and the subset of people that are using these alloys day in, day out is a much smaller population. So relying on door knocking probably isn't going to get you too far.
Yeah.
You'll waste a lot of time and energy doing that, and we've seen that. We've done that at various points in time and had a few spectacular wins and lots of days of fallow time
Great days, those, aren't they? They're great learning days.
in the field, literally in the field.
Yeah.
So I think the website's important. I think getting out and about and talking to people is important. There's still a role for exhibitions and events and conferences, but they do seem more expensive and maybe harder to justify than perhaps they would have been in the past. To some extent, you end up having a sort of a balanced approach. You can't just do one thing. But coming back to the original question, has the website been a driver for growth? For sure. We generate a lot of random inquiries, from people we've never come across before, and there's a lot of pay dirt and junk. But then there's a few nuggets in there as well, and some applications and people you would never have thought of or would go looking for.
Yeah.
Come to you.
Well, the reason I mention it is nowadays with AI tools, you could create a website in seconds with all the different applications of all the different grades and all that kind of stuff. And
Oh yeah,
you had to write it.
I know.
So you spent a huge amount of time doing that, which was one of the things that's other people don't want to do. People don't want to build
That
their websites
investment in
out.
time.
Correct.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So was that a strategic decision? Did you look at that and think, right, this is the best way, or this is one of the better ways for us as a business to attract those kind of companies? Was that? Tell me how that kind of
Well,
happened.
the honest answer was that the website at the time I joined the company was crap. In fact, it wasn't a website; it was several, in several different languages in several different parts of the world that didn't reflect what the business was doing. So it was an easy decision to say,
Yeah.
this is poor, we need something better. So investing a fair chunk of time. But I'll be honest and say that I've continued to invest a lot of time and effort in it subsequently, because I actually see it as being a sort of important engine for our business. At the end of the day, we're selling globally. So I can't rely on somebody popping out in a car and knocking on a few doors, around the Black Country, because my customers aren't exclusively there. I've got customers literally in every corner of the world. And try as we might to get out and about and meet and greet and press the flesh, we are relying on, other forms of communication, and you can't really avoid that too much. So collectively, we travel a lot. I've got somebody in France this week. I'll have one of my guys who'll be going off to the Middle East shortly. So we're not afraid of getting on the plane and getting out and about, but web or digital is a great way of trying to hit other people in other parts of the world.
This episode is brought to you by Nero Pipeline Connections, the go-to supplier for stainless steel tube, fittings, valves and pipeline products across the UK. Whether you're in process, manufacturing or engineering, Nero makes sourcing simple. They've got over 12,000 products in stock, from BSP, fittings to flanges, valves and fasteners, and all are available for next day delivery. With ISO 9001 accreditation and an experienced team, they're built for businesses that can't afford downtime. So check out nero.co.uk to explore their full range. And now, back to the pod.
How have you found talking at conferences? Obviously, you've done since
Done
I've
a few now,
yeah,
yeah.
done a few. I was going to say since COVID, for instance, probably where I think initially Compton Group started speaking with Langley Alloys is obviously you've done a lot of those conferences. How have those opportunities come to you, and how do you find doing them?
So to be honest, I love doing it.
Yeah.
It's can be scary, it
Yeah, I
can be
can imagine.
intimidating, but then I have to remember my own sort of advice to my colleagues in that if you're talking about something, chances are you're probably the sort of most knowledgeable person on that particular subject in the room. So once you get over the nerves and
Yeah,
up on the podium and say the first few words, you're up and running. But to be honest, I fell into it. We were doing a big event in a former role, and everyone was looking at everybody else as to who was going to sort of present and lead on this particular subject. And I just sort of, oh, I'll do it.
yeah,
And then I had the thoughts of thinking, what on earth have I got myself into here?
yeah.
But by then there was no going back. So it was literally
Yeah, gotta do it.
got to do it. And it was a great experience. So it was nerve-wracking and scary, but then you actually get a lot of sort of reward from it. You get a bit of a buzz in a way. And to be honest, now if colleagues will have said, "Oh, where are you going today?" "Oh, you have to go and see the guys from Compton." It's like, better you than us sort of thing. And I'm going, no, it'll be good fun. But I'd probably sort of rationalize it away to say, I don't mind doing it, and I quite enjoy hanging out and shooting the breeze, knowing that a lot of my colleagues would run a mile from the idea of being captured for posterity on a video. So
Any wins, like, off maybe speaking at an event, or because obviously you've been getting on camera quite a bit as a bit of a face of the business, which Mike and I have been doing for a long time ourselves, and we know that it's been beneficial. You can never really quantify it, but you do get. There are certain things where you're like, yeah, that's come from exactly that, or that's come from someone saying. So yeah, any kind of successes that you've had, because people generally don't want to do it. So it's almost like, why should they, based on maybe some of the successes you've had?
why should they? I think it's a difficult one still, because it is outside of a lot of people's comfort gaps. But then with a lot of marketing activity, of which this is one, it's really difficult at times to attribute any success from it. It's not like, oh, I saw you and I gave you an order. It would be awesome if that happened. But I certainly haven't got the measurements and the tools and the metrics to say that's happened. But I've gone to somewhere for the first time and the other person's almost like recognized me, feels like they know me before I'd even stepped through the door. And in terms of that being an icebreaker or getting you past that first doorstep challenge,
Well, it
has been
helps,
pretty
doesn't
cool.
it?
Oh,
Yeah, it
absolutely.
helps.
You've got something to talk about from day one anyway, like a shared experience. So whether it's a door opener or something to provide a bit of reassurance, it's worked in that respect.
That's where I think we've had the biggest wins, is when we've been at these networking events, whether they're associations, whether they're exhibitions, where people, you almost become that safe place for them to come and stand on your stand. Or if you're if you're at an expo, not an expo, if you're at a networking event where everyone's walking and they can feel very daunted, almost go into a familiar face, and sometimes you don't know who they are because they don't post. So they're seeing you, but you don't know them. But I think that's been like something I can actually say we've won a lot on those.
And definitely the more you do, the easier it gets. But also the more you do, the more likely you are to be asked or invited to do something else by association as well. Because what do they say? A volunteer is worth 10 pressed men. So if you approach somebody and they're open to it, they're more likely to say yes, and you're more likely to then crack on and deliver.
Have you ever worried about what people think?
Yes.
And that.
Of course.
So how did you overcome that bit?
Ultimately, there's no substitution for preparation. being organized, being prepped. If it's a more technical event or conference or presentation, I can spend days fussing over slide decks and spell checks and the rest. But then I'll also put the effort into practicing it, and I'll have my first few sentences known off by heart. And once you're up, you get on with it. Then you're not going to start crying and walk off the stage.
But if
you're
you're
committed.
doing video, because I think that's like the other side of it. It's like you can prepare for a presentation. You know what you're going to talk about. People are going to listen based on, right, this is valuable. So that's difficult in its own right. I'm talking more about, hey, I'm in America today. I'm going to be going out to do X, Y, and Z. Like, how do you feel about how people might view that and judge you? And does that influence how you are? And how do you overcome those thoughts?
For me, it's a really simple answer. I somewhat don't care.
Yeah, that's my answer.
But 10 or 20 years ago, I'd have been absolutely mortified.
Mm.
So we all recognise our friends and colleagues that go, oh, I don't look like that. Oh, I don't sound like that. Oh, I hate the sound of my own voice, and all of this lot. But at some point, whether it's experience or exposure or maturity, or you just care less, either about your own appearance, but also about what other people think as well.
Yeah.
So
That is the
you
joys
lose
of
that.
getting older, isn't it? You don't care what people.
To some extent, but not to the point of arrogance. I'll say what I like and I like what I say. It's more just less bothered about second guessing what people may think or feel. Just get on with it. If you want to do it, do it. If you don't.
I just think it's such a powerful tool, the video. I mean, when we started doing it, I absolutely hated it. I didn't want to do it at all.
Yeah, but you must have done thousands literally now, yeah?
There are thousands now, but I'm talking like I think the first year of doing it, I did not want to do it. I didn't buy into it at all.
And was it always one take or?
No, loads. I actually found it easier doing videos when I was like, I used to do a lot when I was just walking down the street, or I found those a lot easier than sat there at my desk saying, we've got an internal sales job, or, this is going on. I found that really hard because and then the other thing I stopped doing now is I don't watch them back.
Well, that's
Just
certainly a
post
good
now.
way of, not worrying over it.
Just almost say it now, but it's just the reach it gets. I think that's the thing that what we found, hasn't it? It's like for us, you're a small business, how quickly you can get a message out there.
Well, it's a channel. You asked Pete about, was it worth spending all that time on the website? Yes. But is that the only thing you do? No. So you visit and you go to expos and occasionally you try and do a bit of social media, or you put yourself out there for conversations like this. It's just, you can't rely on one channel or approach. And you just have to embrace as many as you can, but within reason.
How do you work with those warmer leads that are coming through? Because when you get a nibble, particularly from a new account, obviously like, okay, I'll have a look. Oh, it looks like a legit person. What's the approach within Langley? Do you look after those, or are they passed to the sales team? And if the sales team takes a lead, how are you making sure that you don't, because you don't want to burn it straight away, or go into like, what's the approach?
It's a really good point. There is a school of thought. Chris, our business owner, has said to me many times before, those leads, prospects, new customer opportunities, they mean more probably to the individual that finds them. So, and I tend to agree actually from experience. So there was a web chat that came through the website a couple of weeks ago, and people were out of the office or away. So I jumped on it and just started chatting, sharing some perspectives. And we got into a more technical conversation, but ultimately I have to hand it over to my sales manager. But I don't quite want to let go of it, just because it's a bit like,
makes it exciting.
Well, it's rewarding for me, for sure. One. Two, I think I've got a little bit to offer still in terms of the subject matter, but I want to make sure that it's successful and it's followed through. So I don't want to quite let go of it too soon. So there is a learning element to that in terms of when is the best time to pass things over. So if we create a a machine that generates lots of inquiries and opportunities. How do you manage them amongst a team, when to hand over and when to hold? And I guarantee we don't do it right all the time. You know, there's probably as many have fallen through our fingers as we've grasped hold of. So we're constantly trying to improve that.
Yeah, it's just interesting because I think there's a lot of these new tools, and the way things are developing really, really fast. And I'm quite, I see the value in websites, even with all the social media and there being so much traffic on there. I still think your websites are just hugely important, as well as just email. Just what the basics, doing there, like you said, press the flesh. Did you notice that as well? Yeah. I say press the flesh.
Oh, okay.
Because my dad says press the flesh. So when you said it, I was like, bingo, Michael, his ears were picked up.
Yeah.
See, we've got these kind of traditional ways of selling, but I do think that the websites are really interesting. But I also think those warm leads, they do need to be nurtured.
Oh, absolutely.
There's trying to think of the right way of putting it, but it's almost like, because it's a warm lead coming in and you're almost like, I've already won. It's almost like you've already hit the jackpot before you've nurtured the person through the process. And me and Mike have looked at it when we've looked at how we both sell, and we often have problems where we can go from the start of a call with someone who might be cold, quickly warm them up into, actually they're quite interested in what we're saying or what services we might be able to provide. And then you can just go for the kill, and you're like, whoa, calm down, just back off a little bit. So I'm just wondering about how Langley might be looking at going, right, how do we put that person in? Do we then start sending a few mail shots to warm them up? Are we putting them onto a CRM? Are we actually asking the right questions? Because are we going straight for they just want to buy a specific piece of bar that's turned? And we forget to say, well, what else are you buying? What other applications?
Yep.
What are you doing?
Bit that we're really good at is exactly the pitfall that you described, that you just jump straight in.
Yeah.
We deal with the inquiry that's presented to us. We send a quotation. We'll follow up the quotation. They'll place an order or they'll not place an order. And then we just move on to the next one. And so just because they didn't buy today doesn't mean they won't necessarily buy in the future, or just because they chose not to select that alloy, at some point in the future, they may select a different one. So what we're very good at is dealing with that high turnover of transactional inquiries and opportunities, quote and follow up and win, hopefully. What we're not so good at is following up from the ones which didn't convert on day one. There's a lot of value potentially in those. So for every sort of gold nugget that we might find that comes into the business, how many flakes of gold have we just discarded and put on a pile because it wasn't a super attractive order that converted just like that? So there's quite a bit of work going on in the business at the moment, trying to link the website and the digital communications and the email activity with a CRM, and trying to do things in a much more intelligent, joined up manner, which is easier said than done when you've got a really good back office system, which doesn't necessarily lend itself to being easily integrated with other tools and techniques. So I've been at it for more than 12 months. We're within touching distance of getting it all interconnected and working, and getting the sales team operating in a different way, because we can grow the business, but I wonder how many opportunities we've missed out on just from not capturing everyone.
You love a lapsed account, don't you, Mike?
Mine don't lapse.
Never lapsed.
But we'll have the lapsed accounts, but lapsed is fine, because that's in our system.
You get that many in recruitment, honestly. I wish we never.
But for us, it's the people that never quite made it to even being a lapsed account. They were just an historical contact or connection that we haven't kept in touch with.
Yeah. I think you can just burn data, can't you? We talk about it in our business. Sometimes you can be on I think especially on, I don't know what's going on in your business, but there's a lot of people in the market wondering about demand. It's quiet, it's harder. And I think you can be if we go back to, say, coming out of COVID, where it was a really buoyant market, tell people collecting that data, collecting that information and nurturing them, like what Pete's saying. Because now when people are quiet, it's almost People are looking for old day books. Who was that? Who was that company who come on last year who's give us that really nice inquiry? And they're talking that much in detail. They know everything other than the name of the company, and it's all guesswork, isn't it? And
Well,
I think
we're doing hundreds of inquiries, or sorry, hundreds of quotations a week. So tens of thousands of quotations a year. But the number of contacts, number of people engaging with us via email or through the website will be several times bigger than that. But if it didn't become an inquiry or a quotation,
Yeah.
they're just being left behind at the moment, which is criminal, really,
yeah.
from a business
I
perspective.
think that's
So,
the problem that a lot of businesses
but
have.
guess what? We quote today, and then tomorrow, guess what? The inbox is full, and we quote all of that, and the day after, the inbox is full, and we quote all of it, and we just keep on going.
Mhm.
Well, it's like what Mike said, though, isn't it? It's that kind of around COVID when things were really buoyant, everyone was just, knocking it out of the park and making loads of money. It's sometimes it is criminal to think how much has been burned and not having a system in place to actually capture. But sometimes there's that feeling of almost like the video with yourself. It's like you've just got to start, haven't you, somewhere and be like, right, we're just going to start capturing this. We're going to start nurturing it. We're going to start doing it properly. We're definitely looking at it in our business at the moment because we've just got so much data.
Yeah.
So much data. And it's like, if we're not talking to people all the time, and you can't physically do it all face to face or on the telephone.
No, I mean, over the last few years, we've grown in terms of taking more people on in the warehouse and operationally, more people in finance, in technical, lots more people in the sales team, coping with that day-to-day drumbeat. But when you realize that you're generating more than you're necessarily consuming, so our last hire within the business was a dedicated marketing resource, not to necessarily just promote the business in terms of outbound communications, but do a better job of collating and pulling together all of the stuff that's coming in. And in terms of projects within the business, looking at sort of business intelligence, how do you mine all of that data to find the more useful trends and patterns, and how do you connect and run a CRM when you're operating through multiple disparate systems? So at some point, you can carry on adding bums on seats and more and more people in the office, but there's an element then of being smarter about it as well, and that's probably becoming a bigger part of our focus now.
The Metal Guys Talk Business podcast is brought to you by Compton Group, a recruitment agency operating in the metal, manufacturing and engineering sectors. With a large, engaged network of candidates and clients, we help businesses make great hires in sales, operational, technical, quality and managerial roles, as well as assisting people in their careers by matching their unique skills and aspirations to businesses that are hiring. Having worked with more than 200 niche businesses since 2019, Compton Group have become the go-to recruitment partner for many of our industry's leading names. So talk to us about your next career move or let us work with you on your business's next hire. Compton Group, recruitment engineered for metal and manufacturing.
Do you find it interesting how fascinated people are who are metal manufacturers or even distributors in mainland Europe, how interested they are in the UK market, considering how small we are really in the terms of things of like Germany and the US as obviously markets, what you're doing. So I do find it interesting how fascinated people are with the UK market.
We're
'cause it's just,
small. Well,
yeah.
We're a lot smaller than we were, but we're probably still reasonably significant.
Yeah, there's a lot of tonnage used still.
Yeah.
There's
Even
a lot going through.
even in our little niche, there's more competitors than I'd care for
Yeah.
who are earning a decent living. If we could have their UK sales to the point they didn't exist, we'd double, triple the size of the business comfortably. We bigger fish in a smaller pond, but our share of that market is still small.
How do you see the market between the UK and the US? Obviously, you've done, even in your earlier career, you was in the US working. How's that market? And
The US is just massive, but the one eye opener for me is having spent time in and around Houston this last 12, 15 months. Okay, Houston's a city, but metropolitan Houston is like 60, 70 miles up or down. So if you're going to see a customer in Houston, you'll still spend a couple of hours in the car whizzing round. but the sheer concentration of distributors, processors, machinists, end users, it's unlike anywhere else.
It seems
It
more.
feels a bit like the Black Country,
Yeah.
but
On steroids.
whereas the roads were designed for horses and carts, these are 5-6 lane interstates, but the same thing. You're driving along and you're going, oh, that's where so and so's located. Oh, look at that truck with pipes on the back. Oh, so and so's around the corner from so and so, and there's just such a concentration of metal bashing activity. Now, in fairness, it's a massive port, so it's an obvious entry point into the US for metal products. They'll get imported through Houston anyway, and obviously it's an oil and gas town, so strongly associated with that industry. But you put that together, a sort of an entry point, a big port, and having that indigenous industry, but it just
Yeah, how's it like selling there? Because is it quite different selling in the States? So I just felt like it was a little bit more organised between, we do this and then it goes to this person and then they sell it to this person. It seems more organised. I might be completely, how do you find it compared to?
No, I don't think the market structure is necessarily any different. You've got the people that make it, you've got people that distribute, you've got subcontractors, you've got OEMs, you've got big end users. The players and the structure is largely the same. Maybe some of the business practices are slightly different. You probably get a better reception if you rock up with a pack of donuts in the morning, or there's more likelihood potentially for business to be done over lunch. But once you go beyond that superficial element, in a way, for me, it's very similar. Or for our business, it's very similar. We generally know or try to make it our business to find the people that we should be doing business with, and you try to build a relationship with the right person in that business.
And you're doing that from the UK for
No.
yourself? No.
There's a great team over there already, and I go over every month or two to just get involved. We try and operate the two sites in a similar way as possible. Shared system, common stock range, pricing. We have some consistency in terms of how we do that. We'll pass customers across locations. We can sell out of both sites as well. So, the US site deals with North America. The UK site deals with most of the rest of the world. But that's not to say the US site can't sell stock out of the UK and the UK can't sell stock out of the US, because geographically sometimes it's easier to ship to other parts of the world from either location. So
Largely the same.
You mentioned there.
there's differences, language and dress and customs and practices, but a lot more similarities than differences, I'd say.
Where do you prefer to do business?
I actually don't mind.
Yeah.
I actually don't mind. I don't think there's necessarily a big difference between the locations. It's probably just some people, some companies, some applications you find easier to deal with or more rewarding to deal with. I don't think it's one or t'other. And I could have imagined myself in a different life, being quite comfortable living over there and operating out of there full time.
Yeah, because you mentioned there, like, turn up with donuts they enjoy, and then going out for dinner. Like, when I started my career, that was almost like whenever you went on the road, you try and meet with someone for an evening meal, you try and take someone out for a sandwich at lunchtime. Now that seems to have died.
Be frowned
doesn't it?
upon a little bit, yeah.
Yeah, it does.
Well,
Yeah.
it's tough sometimes, just even if you want to meet people and it's kind of, well, sometimes I say, "Oh, I don't even want it to feel like work. I'll just come and meet you where you live, we'll go and have a pint, have a chat and stuff like that." But it's almost, people don't want to do it. They don't want to go
Is
out.
that completely different in the US? It's almost part of the sales process.
Yes and no. I mean, maybe I'm in danger of overcalling it, because I think it will depend on the circumstances or the situation, I guess ultimately it's if the individual thinks there's some value in the conversation, as to how much time they'll dedicate to it.
What do you think about these tariffs? Because today, when we're recording it, it's like tariff day in America. I know that by the time we put this out, it'll be old news. But what have been the conversations that you've had? Because obviously it's going to affect your business. And, how do you think these tariffs will actually, pan out in the States?
Yeah,
Yes.
um, the logic for having tariffs in the first place is inconsistent. The products and the alloys that we tend to focus on, most of the market in the US is served by materials that are manufactured in Europe, and it's not that there aren't manufacturers of alloys in the US. They just choose to make different things. So all of a sudden, all of the European material being 25% more expensive from day one isn't necessarily going to encourage those US manufacturers to make those same products. So you just end up imposing more costs on US manufacturers for those grades. So this is tariffs 2.0. The last set we're in from 2018 to 2022, I think, by the time they fully came out. So US manufacturers had 4 years to respond, and then they've had another couple of years to think about it. And here we are again. And for the alloys that we're involved with, they will be predominantly European manufactured. And that's not us. All of our competitors and all of our mill partners are present in that market. So in that respect, it makes zero sense at all. And to some extent, because most people have been through this process now a few years ago, it's not as exciting, it's not as scary, it's much more, we'll just do what we did last time and we'll understand the consequences of it. So it's just a pain. It's just another thing to have to contend
How
with.
do you have to adapt as a business though of taking all these things? There's obviously a lot of information to take in. As a business, is that something yourself, Chris, gets on with, or do you have a legal team, someone to look at it all? I mean, or associations, do they provide you with information to know what's going on? Or
I guess at an individual level, you keep your ears to the ground. You're watching what's going on in the news, and then on this particular issue, it's a case of using the team that are located in the US. We hear the news, we see it coming, and the sales guys, can you be talking to some of our customers? Can you find out what other people are doing? What's the response going to be? And you just get as many opinions and perspectives and views as you can and build that in. And then you go, right, we'll just change the price list.
Yeah.
And we just have to be consistent in terms of the way that we organize ourselves. We have to be consistent in terms of our pricing methodology and consistent in terms of how we communicate that to customers. And because our US customers have been through it before, they're somewhat world weary about it as well.
Is there anything kind of exciting happening with kind of development of grades? The business Langley, as you said, you've got a lot of trademark grades that you manufactured in the 40s and the 50s. It's kind of how the business was built. Are you finding that you're still looking at developing new austenitic steels? Like, what's happening? What's kind of exciting? Because you're a metallurgist, so you do get excited by these kind of things and the applications.
No,
Yeah,
I don't think. No, I don't.
You do.
If you've been in the metals industry long enough, you'll appreciate that the development of metals, it doesn't happen very quickly or very often. And why is that? It's not because people aren't interested in the fundamental science. It isn't that our understanding of metals and metal production and properties isn't evolving, but you come up with a new metal today and you've got to convince people that it's appropriate, that you can manufacture it, that you have decent yields, that your cost structure is stable. There's approval bodies and certification and all of the rest. So even if you came up with the best thing since sliced bread, there's several years of approvals and the rest to get the market switched on to it. So generally speaking, in terms of new alloys and grades, things don't move necessarily that quickly. There are emerging applications. So whether or not, electric vehicles will ultimately take over, or they'll slide back to internal combustion, or hydrogen, may still have a route. So some people get very excited about that, and you go, oh, I wonder if hydrogen creates some new opportunities for us. And you go, no, because it's 316L is the default choice for 95% of hydrogen applications. So there are emerging applications around renewables, for instance, but it often tends to be existing alloys for new applications rather than new alloys for existing end uses. So the actual metal
no
side of
then.
things. Oh, it was a clear no.
Yeah.
The 5-second answer was no.
Yeah.
The 3-minute answer was blah blah blah. No.
Yeah, because I was just interested. Some of this ingenious stuff that's obviously been.
Oh, I love anything new and shiny. I'm like a magpie. I've always been
Yeah.
drawn to, product development, technology development. I love it, and I'm instantly drawn to it. But I'm instantly drawn to it, but very conscious of some of the hurdles that you have to get beyond with bringing a new product to market.
Finally, I just want to know a little bit about how you foresee what you're going to be doing with Langley over the next kind of couple of years, or just in the industry in general. Like, what are the bits that you still want to achieve? You've obviously had a lot of changes in your career, and you've done a lot in your time at Langley. So it's, what's the next bit for you?
Oh, this is almost like a legacy question, yeah? Not
didn't
really.
want to
No,
say
no,
legacy.
no, yeah, don't say the
Yeah.
L word. No, I think, I'm fortunate that I enjoy what I do. I'm fortunate that I get to influence the shape and the direction of the business to some extent. That's a fantastic place to be in. US business has got so much headroom for growth. We consolidated sites and moved to a facility that was way bigger, and it's operating at only a proportion, say, of the UK business. So in that physical footprint, we could do 3 or 4 times the level of sales. So figuring out a strategy or an approach to growing the business, and being a bit more aggressive, growing our stocks, growing our team, and just having a bigger, better, more stable business is a really big challenge, really big opportunity, but a really big challenge to just grow from that footprint. And achieving that would be, something for sure. We've been in the US for 12 years, 13 years, I think, directly with boots on the ground and a warehouse in play, and it generates a decent level of activity. But that physical location could be 3 times its size before we'd have to worry about moving out of it. So that would be one for sure. And I think the UK business or the UK site, given that it's addressing so many different parts of the world, we've grown our export sales massively over the last 5 years. I think sort of continuing to push, the boundaries of where we can sell and what we can sell would be good. But also making sure that the day-to-day business processes, the way we're organized, we're talking about, improving the sales process, improving those internal day-to-day ways of working, making them a bit more secure and organized would be a really good thing as well, to lock in that growth and that progress we've made as a business to make it more secure.
I used to ask this season 1. Any errors of judgment, clarity of vision in your career that you want to share?
You used to say the biggest mistake. You corporate
Yeah,
that
I know.
up,
I
haven't
tried to develop.
Yeah, well, regrets, I have a few. There's definitely times where I'll have put too much faith in individuals only to be disappointed. If you, you hang around long enough hoping or assuming that somebody's gonna provide you an opportunity, put you forward for a role, whatever. And sometimes those individuals are a bit more motivated about their own circumstances than they are for yours. So having had that sort of experience, would I change it? It doesn't really matter. You can't. But I'll be telling my kids to be a little bit more aware, I guess, or self-aware. And by all means, not so much don't put your faith in people, but but do it eyes wide open, and don't hang around too long waiting for somebody else. Take a bit more ownership and responsibility of your prospects, your career, rather than leaving it to
someone else.
and going with the flow. Yeah, but that's a school of hard knocks that sits beneath, a shiny, glossy CV. Wasn't all beer and Skittles.
Thank you for sticking around till the end of the podcast. To help this channel grow, if you could like it, share it with any of your colleagues or people who are in the metals or engineering or manufacturing sectors, that would be great. Also, you might feel like you're the perfect guest for our podcast to tell your story of your career, or maybe there's someone in your network who you think would be great for us to interview. If you want to get in contact with myself or Peter Comerford, that would be great. We'd also like to take this opportunity to thank our sponsors, Steelbuy, as well as Nero Pipeline. Thanks for watching.